Now guys, just before we start this video, I just wanted to quickly remind you to join our AFL Fantasy and AFL tipping comps. The codes are on screen right now. All you have to do with the tipping comp is download the ESPN Footy Tips app and join up to the league. And if you win either the AFL Fantasy League or the AFL tipping comp, you will win a $100 gift voucher to the AFL store. So make sure to click the links down below, join up, and let's have some fun. But for now, let's get into today's video. Move into some early AFL player predictions for 2025. So when I'm talking about this, we're talking about the medals for the AFL. So the Brownlow medal, the Coleman medal, the Rising Star. And then we've gone to another 3 predictions for the Boundary Riders medal, of course, the biggest medal in the AFL, the biggest,
the most prestigious.
the most prestigious. Everyone talks about it. AFL players, they keep it pretty secretive, but they do let us know every now and then.
Stop the cap.
And then the best traded player, so a player who moved over the off season, and then the first time All Australian. So anyway, I'm going to go through my predictions first, and then we'll let you go through yours, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. So my early predictions for 2025: the Boundary Riders medalist, I'm picking Nick Dacos. For the Brownlow medal in 2025, I've gone Nick Dacos as well. For the Coleman medal, I've gone with Nick Larkey. For the Rising Star, I've gone Sid Draper. The best traded player, or player movement player, will be Bailey Smith. And then the first time All-Australian is Max Holmes. What are you looking at this year?
So, the Brownlow medalist is Nick Dacos. The Boundary Riders medalist will be Tom Green. Coleman will go to Jeremy Cameron again. The Rising Star will go to Josh Smiley. The best traded player will be Shea Bolton. And the first time All-Australian will be James Rowbottom.
All right, so we'll start with the Boundary Riders medalist. I've picked Nick Dacos, you've picked Tom Green. So Boundary Riders medal, if you don't know, works a little bit different to the Brownlow. It is similar with the 3-2-1 voting system. However, this year, if you want to become a channel member, you can have your say on the Boundary Riders medal. Let me explain. We'll be doing a poll every single week of every single player that gets 3 votes in a game of the round. And we'll put every single one of them players will be in a list, and whoever gets the most amount of votes from members will get the members' vote. So we'll get 1 extra vote every single round. So out of 24 rounds, 25 games, 25 weeks, 25 weeks of the season, the regular season, and 24 rounds, there's a chance that a player could get, I mean, obviously it won't happen, but a player could get 24 extra votes. You guys can have the say and change the game. But the reason why I've picked Nick Dacos is because he was very close to winning it last year. He came back with the house on fire, and I'm expecting Collingwood to do big things this year. So I think he's going to get a lot of games where he gets a lot of 3 votes. Our preference a lot of the time is the winning team. The player who's on the winning team usually gets the 3 votes this season. You've gone with Tom Green.
Tom Green close to winning it if it wasn't for all the injuries he had for it. The midway through the year that cost him the past 2 years in performing well in the Brownlow as well. I just think that if he gets a good run at it, he'll have a good shot at getting close to it.
To be honest though, you picked the Giants to finish pretty low on the ladder predictor.
Yeah, but that's the same thing like with Zach Merritt last year, who won the Boundary Riders medal.
Very true.
He started off, Essendon started really well, and then they fell off a cliff.
Yeah, Zach Merritt polled very early on.
I think that it's the time for the Tom Green to step up, even though he has really done that well. The injuries have stalled it, but I think if he gets a good run of 20 games, he'll be up there with the Brownlow medalist and the Boundary Riders.
The more prestigious award, the Boundary Riders medal. Exactly. I agree with you. All right, so next is the Brownlow. We've both picked Nick Dacos. Now, I'm going to I haven't talked to you about this, but I feel like we have a very similar thought to this. It's the fact that he got 38 Brownlow votes last year and still lost it.
Yeah.
I can't see them giving Patrick Cripps 45 again. And another year with Nick Dacos for the preseason, another year on Patrick Cripps. I can't see a player like a Patrick Cripps polling that many votes again. And Nick Dacos is always in the eyes of the umpires. Yeah. I'm thinking Collingwood are going to be one of the top teams next year. So they're going to get a lot of wins, which usually, again, gets a lot of 3 voters. Yeah. Nick Dacos, for me, I feel like it's pretty... I'm not going to say it's obvious. I think he'll be pretty high on the betting front early on in the season. Yeah. But for me, I think it's pretty self-explanatory why I'm picking Nick Dacos.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much what you said. I think that if Collingwood finish in the top 2, he'll break Paddy Cripps' record next year. By the end of the season. Yeah, I reckon he'll break it. That's how confident that he'll smash that record. He'll get more than 45.
Yeah, considering you got
'Cause-
38 in the team
yeah.
that didn't make the 8.
Well, with Carlton, say for Paddy Cripps, sometime Sam Walsh has got to take the mantle. Someone's got to take the mantle off that, and that's what will stall his points, and that's what's always hampered Bontempelli with all the players taking votes off him.
Yeah, I think it's option why I didn't pick any of the Sydney midfielders.
So who let's be honest, who's going to take votes off Nick Dacos?
Yeah, not very often.
Not many other people.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally there'll be a De Goey who has a massive game.
It'll be De Goey or like a forward who kicks 6.
Yeah, maybe
or,
Dan Houston who has a massive game off half-back.
And maybe a Darcy Cameron who has a blinder in the ruck.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to happen, maybe 3 times, 4 times, maybe?
Yeah, and even
this
then, Nick
season.
Dacos could still have the massive game as well and get 2 votes.
So, that's why I think I'll call it now. If they finish in the top 2, he'll break Paddy Cripps' record.
All right, big calls only here on the channel, guys, obviously. Next, the Coleman. I've picked Nick Larkey. Now, the reason why I've picked Nick Larkey is even though I have North Melbourne pretty low on my ladder predictor, my tune's kind of changed about them. I feel like they've had a pretty good pre-season. Looking at the recruits that they've brought in and another year into their younger players, I feel like there's going to be an improvement with North Melbourne. Maybe not so much on the ladder, but I do think there's going to be a lot of improvement. And with the Jack Darling coming to the team now, another year into people like Paul Curtis, Cam Zurhaar, I think there's going to be defences are going to find it a little bit harder to just... Because, I mean, at the moment, it's basically been lockdown Nick Larkey, you stop North Melbourne scoring a lot of the time. I think with another year into a lot of their midfielders, a lot of their users, Caleb Daniel coming into the team, if he can be one of the top 20 inside 50 kickers in the comp, he'll get a lot more opportunity at goal.
Yeah.
So, Nick Larkey a couple of years ago almost won the Coleman. If it wasn't for the fact that Taylor Walker and Charlie Curnow both filled their boots against North Melbourne and West Coast in 2023, he would have won the Coleman medal.
Yeah.
Last year he had a bit of a down year, still kicked 50 plus goals, but I think Nick Larkey, I think this is going to be a massive year for him. But you picked Jeremy Cameron.
Yeah, he was hard done by last year with Jesse Hogan having an absolute blinder of a year.
Yeah.
It will be interesting what Chris Scott does with the lineup. With the fact is that is he allowed to play up the field like he does and come back, or does he have to be not the full forward because that will be Shannon Neal, but is his role going to change a bit? And I think what will happen is that he'll play a bit more forward, and they'll get all the smalls to go up the field and bring it back. That's what I think that's what they're going to do. Just to give Shannon Neal a bit of a chance to work with Jeremy Cameron.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it last year, Tom Hawkins was in and out of the team earlier, but then Shannon Neal got kind of chucked in and held there for the later part of the season, and he had some good games, but also looked a little bit all at sea at times.
He did, yeah, and especially in those finals. They got to the prelim, but he didn't really perform in it.
I mean, the first final, let's be honest, Port Adelaide were the easiest team to beat.
Yes.
I mean, even though Carlton weren't that great in the first half against Brisbane, which lost the game, Port Adelaide were dreadful in that first final.
Yeah.
So Geelong got an easy kill. And it's not to say they didn't play well. They played brilliantly. But they also got an easy kill. So Shannon Neal was kind of overlooked in that first final. And I think that's another reason why Cameron can win it is because he's going to kick a lot of their goals. Like, their smalls will definitely contribute.
Yeah.
But a lot of them as well are distributors of goals. Like, you think of Brian Myers, he's one of the top goal assist players for the last couple of years. Brad Close is the same. With Tom Hawkins no longer there, Jeremy Cameron's already won a Coleman with Tom Hawkins there. So without him, a little bit less, I think he'll be used a lot more. So, yeah, I don't mind that call as well. Now, to the best traded or movement player, I've picked Bailey Smith. The reason why I've picked Bailey Smith is because he was one of the best players of the final series in 2021. Luke Beveridge didn't really use him in the best position at the Bulldogs in 22 and 23. Injured in 2024. I think with mental clearness, mental clarity, less of a spotlight on him in Geelong, he'll be living down there, playing in the correct position, which is either inside mid or wing at the very least. I think he's going to be averaging 20-25 touches a week. And I think that, yes, he did miss the whole year of the game, which, may take him some time to get some touch. Towards that middle to the end period of the year, and I'm thinking finals as well for the Cats, I think Bailey Smith's ready to go. I think he's built for finals as well, which is going to be another appendage to his game for the Cats.
Yeah. Do you think he'll play with a chip on his shoulder?
Yeah, a little bit as well. A bit of a point to prove. So, who did you pick in this spot again?
Big Shea Bolton.
Shea Bolton.
I think he's back home. He's playing at Freo, who are in the window, and they've got a great midfield. They've got an up-and-coming forward line.
He's made an All-Australian team for Richmond as well. So he's got that form.
Yeah.
At his best, he is one of the best players in
I
the,
think
in the
he
country.
could. Yeah, he could get 40 goals and average 15, 20 disposals a game.
Well, if he's kicking 40 goals and averaging, 20 possessions a game, that's Fremantle in the A.
Yeah.
I did think about Shea Bolton as well. I just think the inconsistency is the problem.
I didn't think, that's what I was like, do I just go the easy one like you did and go with Bailey Smith?
The easy one who hasn't played a whole year.
Or Dan Houston.
Yeah,
But
Dan Houston.
I think it's all set up for him, and Freo could really enjoy this period.
And then the Rising Star Awards. So I've gone with Sid Draper from the Adelaide Crows. I've loved the talk about his pre-season, Sid Draper. There's a spot for him to play off that wing and midfield role because I think the Crows are a little bit skinny through there. They did pick up a couple of good players like Neil Bullen and Peatling who probably get that spot, but they want to play some youth through there. I think this will give the license for maybe Rory Laird to play off half back a bit more. Sid Draper, he's a good user. He's a great runner, so he may get off that half back role or play off that wing. And I think those attributes, I think that's what will be seen in the eye of the Rising Star nominators. The votes, usually someone who gets the ball quite a lot has been in the eye for a couple of years now. The one thing I think with the Tigers, with a lot of them, is because they're all together, it may be hard for one of them just to shine through a little bit. But I do think, I definitely had the thought of Smiley or Lalore, even Ashcroft. Just think he's a lone kid. I think that there's a spot there for him. So I think that's why Sid Draper's a standout for me. But you pick Josh Smiley.
Yeah, I just thought, well, they've got so many first rounders. Just pick one. I've heard that he's had a pretty good pre-season. Obviously, he's in Melbourne. They'll be always in the spotlight of the AFL media. It will be between Layla, Sid Draper, Smiley, and the only other one I think could be is Harvey Langford for Melbourne. But those four, I think, will get a good shot this season.
So finally, we take a look at our first-time All-Australian. I've picked Max Holmes. Now, the reason I've been all over him this season, basically. I've talked about him in fantasy. I think he's going to be great this year. The final series that he had was brilliant. The fact that he missed the second half against Brisbane, I think, was a real reason why they lost that game. He was best on ground. Yeah, he's evolved his game now to show that he can play inside mid. He does add something different to the Geelong lineup. So I think that Bailey Smith, Max Holmes, I'm seeing both of them in their midfield this year. And I could see not only him getting midfield minutes, but also playing off half-back as a rotation. I mean, he's such a good user. He showed how good a half-back he could be last year. I think he's ready to evolve his game to another level. And I think with the Cats, I'm just expecting them to be a high finisher. I think that he'll be seen quite a lot more. They usually take a year or two before you get picked in the All-Australian team. He had a very good season last year, so I'm thinking he's going to back that up. And yeah, I think he's going to be one of the players to watch next season.
I think James Rowbottom.
James Rowbottom from the Swans.
I think he's been very underrated for so long. He did get his first Brownlow vote, right? Yeah. I think he's starting to get noticed. Yeah, I've always loved his game. It's the true heart of old school Swans. I also think that Horse always had his favourites. Under Coxie, I think James Rowbottom will be a favourite of his. I just got a feeling that that's the type of midfielder he wants, the type of player he wants. I think that's just the gruntness of him around the polish and skill work of Golden. I think that's what Sid will relish in this year.
Yeah, I think that they definitely need to find that extra, if it is Cal Mills or whatever, they do need to find another one. Yeah, I think just to go with the other guys. But that's pretty much all our player predictions for 2025, guys. Obviously, that we basically just leaked not only the All-Australian team, but who's going to win the Brownlow. So, of course, we do start with opening round. The Brisbane Lions up against Geelong. Tough game. I'm actually going to go with a bit of a surprise pick here. I think with Brisbane coming off the grand final, a couple of injuries, I'm going to go with the Cats in a close one. Sydney v Hawthorn. This is an interesting game, I think, for both teams. I'm going to go with... I'll go with my Swans in the first game. Gold Coast v Essendon in the Gold Coast. I think the Gold Coast have to get off to a good start to the season, so we'll go with them. And then final game of opening round, I'm going to go with the Pies. But then we get to round one, so every single team is into it. And actually, let me know down below, guys, how you feel about opening round, if you like it or if you don't. I'm kind of 50-50 on it at this stage. Carlton will beat Richmond. I think Richmond are in for a pretty tough year. So I think Hawthorn are in for a very good year, so I'm going to go with them here. Down in Geelong against Fremantle. I think Geelong with the extra game will win that one. Sydney v Brisbane, grand final rematch. Is it the SCG? But Brisbane don't have too many bad games there. I'll go with Brisbane. Bulldogs should win that one pretty comfortably. Collingwood v Port Adelaide. This is a really interesting game, but I think with Collingwood with the game in hand, having that little bit of an extra match fitness, I'll go with them. Crows, that's in Adelaide. Crows will win that. MCG, Melbourne v GWS. I'll go with Melbourne. I think at the MCG, I think they give them a bit more of a chance. In Perth, Gold Coast have to win some games away this year, but in Perth, I'm going to go with West Coast. Carlton v Hawthorn at the MCG. I'm going to go with Hawthorn, 15 points, I'll say. I think they're going to have a pretty good start to the year. Bulldogs v Collingwood. I think this is the anniversary game for the Bulldogs this year as well. Being at the MCG, though, I will go with the Pies. Essendon v Adelaide. MCG. Crows don't really have a very good record away from home. I'll go with Essendon. Adelaide over Port Adelaide. This will be a pretty comfortable win. Geelong v St Kilda at Docklands. I don't know how the Saints are going to go this year. With a couple of injuries, I think they may struggle at the start of the year. So I'll go with Geelong. Brisbane win that one comfortably. Docklands for Melbourne. Seems like Clayton Oliver and Petrarca seem to be in good spirits, but I don't really know how they're going to go this year, to be honest. Fremantle, high hopes for them. I think they'll beat the Swans there. Essendon v Port Adelaide at Docklands. I'll go Port Adelaide. They have a pretty good record there. Carlton v Bulldogs. I'll go with the Blues. Melbourne v Gold Coast. If this is at Marvel, I'd give Gold Coast a good chance here. But at the MCG, I'll give it to Melbourne. St Kilda v Richmond. Yeah, I'll give that one to the Saints. Hawthorn v GWS. That's in Tassie. Yeah, I'll give that to Hawthorn. Crows win that one comfortably. First derby of the year. I'll get that to Freo. Interesting game. The last couple of these games, the old traditional rivals, these are very close games in recent memory. I really don't know how Carlton are going to go. I'm going to give it to them. Geelong will win that one comfortably. In the Gold Coast, Adelaide. I think they're going to have a good year, Adelaide, to be honest. I have to give them a couple of wins away from home because I think they're in for a good year, to be honest. Even though it's the MCG, Brisbane win that one comfortably. And I'll give it to Sydney. North Melbourne are a bit of a 50-50 as well, I think. Giants up against the West Coast Eagles. Yeah, for Sydney, that's fine. Port Adelaide win that one. St Kilda, I think, have a pretty decent, not a great record of winning, but they do keep it close against Port Adelaide. I will give it to Port, though. Perth for Fremantle. Yeah, they win that. Crows up against Geelong and Adelaide. This is the first game of Gather Round 2. Crows have won one game for a gather round and lost one. This is tough. I'll go Geelong in a close one. Collingwood up against Sydney at Adelaide Oval. Collingwood have been pretty good for gather round so far, and they've been pretty decent away from home. I will give it to Collingwood. Gold Coast against North Melbourne in the Barossa. I'm going to go with this a bit of a surprise pick here. I'm going to go North. Carlton up against West Coast. I'll give it to Carlton. Brisbane have been pretty good in gather round. I'll give it to them. Oh, this is a tough one. I'll give it a slight edge to Melbourne. I'll give that one to Freo, even though it's in the Barossa. GWS have played some decent games in gather round, so I will give it to them. Port Adelaide v Hawthorn. This is going to be a great game. I love how the AFL are just broadcasting it as like the big fight with Ken Inkley and Hawthorn last year, even though they fined him 20 grand. They should make him refund that, by the way. That's fucking ridiculous. I'm going to go with... I'll go with Port Adelaide Oval. Brisbane up against Collingwood. I'll go the Lions because it's up there. I feel like North Melbourne have to win a Good Friday game soon. I'm not going to give them this one though. West Coast up against Essendon. I'll go West Coast because Essendon don't have a great record in WA. Melbourne up against Fremantle. Oh, that's tough. It is at the MCG. But Fremantle have been pretty good against Melbourne recent times, I believe. So I'll give it to them. Crows will win that. Oh, in Docklands, I'll give it to Gold Coast. Sydney up against Port Adelaide. Prelim final rematch. I'll give it to Sydney. Bulldogs up against St Kilda. I'll give it the Bulldogs. And then the Easter Monday game. This is going to be interesting, this one. I think Hawthorn are finally back. I'll give it to the Cats. All right, so now that we're at the end of round 6, guys, we'll take a look at the ladder for the first time. And it does seem I've got Geelong undefeated up the top. Brisbane, of course, the reigning premiers, are in second. Fremantle in a good spot there with Collingwood in the top 4. Melbourne's a bit of a surprise having them in the top 8, to be honest. A couple of teams outside the top 8. Very interesting. I've got a couple here. Hawthorn, Sydney, Gold Coast, Giants, and the Bulldogs. I would have expected them to be inside the top 8 at this point, so it's a bit surprising that I've got them outside. And St Kilda right down the bottom here. I think with a couple of injuries, I've got them a bit lower than I would have expected. But Yeah, an interesting start after 6 rounds of the season. But before we go any further, a message from me. If you guys enjoy the content and you want to see more, then make sure to become a member on the channel today. For just $4 a month, you can get early access to video essays, access to live recording to the Boundary Riders podcast, along with exclusive stream perks and much more. And something that I'm super excited to introduce to channel membership this year is the members vote. Every week with the review, you can cast your vote to have your say on the Boundary Riders medal. So for all that and more, click the link down below, and for the added bonus of getting an extra inch onto your member, then do it now. But anyway, let's get back into the content. So the first game of round 7, Melbourne up against Richmond. I'll give that one to Melbourne. And then Anzac Day. Interesting one because Essendon haven't been too bad the last couple of Anzac Days, but I think it will be close. The last one was a draw, so I will have to pick a couple of upsets as well because, I mean, obviously no one's going to win every single game. Yeah, I'll give it to Collingwood. Fremantle up against Adelaide. Yeah, I'll give that to Freo. Docklands, will go to Brisbane. Port Adelaide have a very good record against North. I'll give him that one. GWS against Bulldogs. That's an interesting game. GWS, I'll give it to. Gold Coast against the Swans up in the Gold Coast. Gold Coast had a good record against Sydney for a while, but it's kind of dropped off in recent times. I will give it to Sydney. MCG, Carlton v Geelong. I'll give it to Geelong in a close one. Hawthorn against West Coast. At Docklands, I'll give it a Hawthorn. Essendon v North Melbourne at Docklands. North Melbourne nearly beat them last year, and I think North Melbourne are in for a bit of a decent year. You know what? I'll pick an upset here. I'll pick North Melbourne on the fact that they had a pretty good record had a pretty good game against them last year. I'll give them a go, and I think the forward line of North Melbourne may get some decent games. I'll give it to them there. St Kilda up against Fremantle. It is the Docklands. I don't mind St Kilda in this game, but I'll go Fremantle. That's in Mars, this game, so I'll give it to the Bulldogs. Adelaide versus Carlton, Adelaide Oval. Yeah, Adelaide win that. Collingwood v Geelong at the MCG. I'll go Collingwood, actually. I'll give them that one. West Coast against Melbourne in Perth. I'll give that one to West Coast. They won it last year too. I feel like the Giants have to win a Sydney derby. They've lost the last 3 now, so I'm going to go with the Giants there. Hawthorn up against Richmond. Yeah, Hawthorn win that one comfortably. Hugh Clash. Yeah, Brisbane win that one well. Collingwood have done pretty well over there, but we'll go Fremantle. St Kilda against Carlton at the MCG. It is Spud's game though. Oh, I'll go St Kilda. They'll play for him. Melbourne against Hawthorn at the MCG. That one's Hawthorns. Essendon against Sydney and Docklands. I'll go the Swans. Gold Coast up against Bulldogs. I like the Gold Coast at home. First showdown. Give that one to Port Adelaide. And then, this is an interesting one. Richmond against West Coast at the MCG. You know, I'll give Richmond their first win of the season here. GWS against Geelong down in Cardinia Park. Giants have done really well down there the last few years. I'm going to give it to the Giants, to be honest. North Melbourne against Brisbane down in Tassie. North Melbourne aren't too bad down there. I can't warrant giving North Melbourne a win, like an upset, but I wouldn't be surprised if they claim that. Gold Coast up against Hawthorn in the Gold Coast. I'll give it to Hawthorn though. Sydney up against Carlton. This is Indigenous round, I believe. Yeah, I'll give it to Sydney. Collingwood against the Crows. They usually have close games. I'll give it to Collingwood in a tight one. Port Adelaide v Geelong. Give this one a close one. I'll go Port Adelaide. GWS against Fremantle. Fremantle choked this game last year. I'll go the Giants. Bulldogs up against Essendon at Docklands. Yeah, I think they win that one pretty comfortably. Richmond against North Melbourne at the MCG. I'm going to go North here. I think that North Melbourne will win that one at the Gabba. That's an easy one. Perth Stadium. St Kilda did cause an upset against West Coast last year there, but I don't think they're going to do it again. Geelong down in Cardinia Park. Yeah, I'll go to Cats. Essendon up against Richmond. Yeah, that's Essendon. Carlton up against the Giants. Yeah, I'll go the Blues. I can't see that. I feel like they'll win that one. Hawthorn up against Brisbane. Hawthorn have a good record against the Lions at the MCG. North Melbourne nearly knocked off Collingwood last year at Etihad. I'll go Collingwood. Perth Stadium, Fremantle against Port Adelaide. That is in Perth. They did choke that one last year though, but I mean that was when their finals were going to shit. So I'll go Freo. Adelaide win that, don't they? You'd think so. Sydney up against Melbourne at the MCG. Sydney don't have a good record there, to be honest, but I'll go Melbourne in a close one because it's at the MCG. St Kilda up against the Gold Coast at Marvel. I'll go the Gold Coast here. Couple of points. Yeah, they win that one pretty comfortably, I'd say. Brisbane against the Bombers. Hawthorn up against Collingwood at the MCG as well. This will be a big game. They've had some good rivalries in the past. I like Hawthorn this year. I'll go with them. Huge trip for Fremantle. I'll actually give this one to the Gold Coast. Sydney, they'll flog them. Sydney up against Adelaide. Sydney have a good record against the Crows in recent times. Crows probably have about time to beat them there. Melbourne in Darwin. Yeah, they'll win that. Perth Stadium, West Coast v Geelong. Geelong don't have a bad record, I don't think, there, to be honest. But that's the end of round 12, guys. So 106 games have been tipped. Let's take a look at the ladder predictor after 12 rounds of the AFL season. So with that being said, it's been a bit of a change up on the ladder. Brisbane are sitting in top spot, reigning premiers 10-2. Hawthorn are sitting in second with 9-3. Fremantle 9-3 as well. The Cats 9-3 with Collingwood. So a big logjam between 1 and 5. Port Adelaide, Giants and Sydney have jumped into the 8. So I think 2 of these were outside the 8 in the 6 rounds ago. You can see here that Melbourne are just falling outside the 8 along with the Crows. You got Carlton sitting in an 11th, Gold Coast in 12th, Bulldogs right down here in 13th. Now, because of the buys, a couple of teams, there's some differentials of games played and whatever. But West Coast sit in 14th spot, North Melbourne in 15th. And wow, I have St Kilda and Essendon right down the bottom. That's really harsh. I know a lot of fans won't like that. Richmond still tied to the bottom after 12 rounds. So moving into round 13, Bulldogs up against Hawthorn. Yeah, it's the Docklands though. I'll go Hawthorn. Adelaide Oval against Brisbane. I'll give Crows a sneaky one here. MCG, Richmond beat the Swans last year. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. They'll win that one comfortably. The Cats. Manuka Oval. I like the Giants here. I'll pick them. This one's in Perth. This is that weird ground. I can't remember off the top of my head, but North Melbourne actually don't have a bad record in Perth at recent times. I'll actually go with them here. Carlton up against Essendon. MCG. I've given Essendon a lot of flack in this video, and I'm going to continue to. Sorry. Melbourne up against Collingwood. Melbourne haven't really been good in these Queen's birthday games. The big freeze. I'll go Collingwood. Round 14 at Docklands. I'm going to give this one to St Kilda. They have to start winning eventually. Down in Tassie, Hawthorn win that. At the Gabba, Brisbane win that. The MCG. Geelong have tended to dominate these games against the Bombers. I'm going to go with them again. Fremantle, they did upset them last year, North Melbourne, but that's not going to happen this year. Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide v Melbourne. Melbourne, I think, won this game last year, but I don't see that happening again. Carlton up against West Coast. I'll go with the Blues. I think they've got that one covered. Fremantle up against Essendon. They win that. That's a big game. Down in Geelong. Geelong versus Brisbane. 2 heavyweights this season, I think. I'll go with the Cats just because it's down in Geelong. Yeah, Carlton win that. Adelaide Oval. I don't trust Sydney against Port Adelaide. Adelaide Oval. Last time it scarred me. 112-point loss. Collingwood against St Kilda at Docklands. This may annoy people, but I'm actually going to go St Kilda here because at Docklands, I think Collingwood could slip up in one of those games. The Expansion Cup, that goes to the Giants. Bulldogs win that one. Collingwood win this one. Crows against Richmond. It is at the MCG, but surely the Crows don't lose that. Gold Coast up against Melbourne in Gold Coast. That really didn't hamper Melbourne last time. They did get an upset win there. I'll go with the Gold Coast though. SCG, Bulldogs beat Sydney there last year and they have a pretty good record, I believe. So I'm going to go with the Bulldogs. In Tassie, that doesn't matter. That's Hawthorn. They won about 100 odd points last time. Port Adelaide up against Carlton at Adelaide Oval. Carlton, I think, won the last one at Adelaide Oval, if I remember right. I'll go with Port though. Fremantle will win that one comfortably. Oh, God, can I go to 100? How high can you go? 60. Oh, no, you can go to 100. All right. 100 points to Geelong. At Docklands, I'll still go Hawthorn, though. North Melbourne up against Bulldogs. North Melbourne. This is about round 17. North Melbourne. I think this is going to be a bit of a jump in form. I'll go with them. Surely Essendon don't choke again. I'll pick them there. Collingwood up against Carlton. I'm going to go like 3 points here for either side. I'll go Carlton. Sydney up against Fremantle. We lost this one last year. I don't think we do that again. Brisbane up against Port Adelaide. I'll go with Brisbane. And this one's going to be tough too. Melbourne and Crows. I'll go with the Crows. Perth Stadium. I still trust the Giants though. I'll go with the Giants again. I think they've got a good run of form against the Cats. That's down in Mars, so Bulldogs win that one well. St Kilda up against Sydney. This is in Melbourne. Docklands, I feel like Sydney can win that one though. Carlton up against Brisbane at Docklands. You give it to the Lions. Melbourne and North Melbourne at the MCG. I'll go with Melbourne here. Richmond up against Essendon. I'll go with Essendon. It'll be close, but I'll go with Essendon here. Gold Coast up against Collingwood in Gold Coast. Gold Coast have a pretty good record against Collingwood up there, so I'll go with them. Port Adelaide against West Coast. They should win that one comfortably at Adelaide Oval. And then Fremantle up against Hawthorn in Perth. Yeah, I'll go Freo. But that is the end of 18 rounds, guys. So let's take a look at the ladder predictor heading into the final quarter of the season. So looking at the ladder predictor now, Brisbane are on top, equal with Geelong, Hawthorn, and Fremantle, 13 and 4. So it's really tight up the top. Port Adelaide and Collingwood and the Giants all 11 and 6. So a really tight final 8. Sydney are just teetering on the top 8, and the Crows just behind them in 9th. Then you've got Carlton, Melbourne, Bulldogs, and the Gold Coast fighting for those final spots. At this stage, North Melbourne are out, sitting in 14th. Essendon are in 15th. St Kilda are in 16th, West Coast are in 17th, and Richmond, with the 1 win, are in 18th spot. So let's finally get into the last quarter of the season. The first game up is Geelong up against St Kilda. Geelong at home, I'd pick Geelong. Docklands for Essendon v GWS, close contest, I would imagine. I'm going to go with the Giants. At the MCG, Carlton win that. At the MCG, Collingwood win that. The SCG, Sydney win that. At the Gabba, that's Brisbane every day. Down in Tassie, yeah, that's Hawthorn. Adelaide Oval, yeah, that's the Crows. In Perth, I can't see West Coast losing that. Giants up against Sydney. I'll give Sydney this one. At Docklands, it'll be closer. I'll give them 37 points. St Kilda up against Melbourne in Docklands. Yeah, I'll go the Saints. Bulldogs up against Essendon. Essendon actually have a pretty good record against the Bulldogs, I think. So I'll go with Essendon. Collingwood. I won't be that mean. I'll go to 60. Hawthorn against Carlton. Yeah, I'll go the Hawks. Do I give Gold Coast a Q Clash win here? I think I do. I think they'll win at home. Showdown, Crows v Ports. This will be getting close to the end of the season. And if my predictions are correct, this will be a very important showdown. I'll go with Port. They'll want to win for Ken in his last showdown. Derby. Yeah, that's Freo. And then Port Adelaide and Geelong and Gideon Park. Well, Port Adelaide finally broke the drought down there, but there's going to be a new drought coming. St Kilda up against North Melbourne. I'll give that to North. Why not? I feel like they'll be improving towards the end of the season. Melbourne at home. It is at Docklands, though. I don't know. Melbourne haven't played there a lot in the last few years because of how their form's been. They've been a lot better teams, so they don't have to play there as much. But now, I don't know if they're going to be as good. I don't really think they're much of a speedy team, so I'm going to go with West Coast in a bit of an upset. I think the Bulldogs win that one. Round 21, Collingwood against Brisbane at the MCG. Close, but Collingwood. Gold Coast win that. Sydney up against Essendon at home. I'll go the Swans. Hawthorn up against Adelaide Oval. This is going to be a good game. I'll go with the Crows in a close one. Freo up against Carlton in Perth. I'll go Freo. Geelong win that one comfortably. Yeah, you go to the Giants there. Carlton win that one well. St Kilda v Richmond. I'm going to give this one to Richmond, being at the MCG. It's going to be I think it'll be a close game, but I think Richmond will get their second win. Melbourne up against the Bulldogs at the MCG. Could you give that one to the Bulldogs? I'm very iffy on the Bulldogs this year. I'm going to go Melbourne, actually. Hawthorn up against Collingwood at the MCG. I'm going to go Collingwood. Brisbane at the Gabba beat the Swans. Port Adelaide up against Fremantle at Adelaide Oval. Yeah, I'll go to Port. Perth Stadium, West Coast v Adelaide. Adelaide haven't been too bad over there the last few years, but I feel like West Coast are going to be on the improve a little bit, at least win some more games at home, so I'll go them. Bell Reeve, this is down in Tassie, this is North Melbourne all day. Docklands, I feel like St Kilda will win that. Bulldogs up against West Coast. Yeah, the Bulldogs getting that one pretty comfortably. I'm going to go Port Adelaide here in Docklands. Hawthorn up against Melbourne, that's Hawthorn. Gold Coast up against the Giants. Did we give the Gold Coast a bit of an expansion cup win? They've been on a bit of a drought for a very long time. You know what? I'm going to say the Gold Coast break the drought. Sydney up against Geelong at the SCG. Sydney have had a pretty good record against the Cats at the SCG in recent times. I'll go the Swans. Crows up against Collingwood. Collingwood have done well at Adelaide Oval in recent times. But I think the Crows at this stage fighting for their season. I'm going to go with the Crows. Brisbane haven't been too bad against Fremantle in recent times in Perth. But yeah, I'll go Freo here. So finally, guys, we have one more round to go in the season. So I think with 9 games left in the regular season, we'll take a look at the ladder predictor, see what teams have to do to make finals from here. So looking at it right now, I've got the Cats finishing on top with 17 wins and 5 losses. Then we've got Hawthorn and Fremantle in 2nd and 3rd. Brisbane, the reigning premiers, are in 4th. Collingwood are in 5th. Port Adelaide and Sydney are in 6th and 7th, which means the Giants are clinging onto the top 8, with the Crows the only team who can break in. Carlton are out of finals contention in 10th, Gold Coast 11th, Bulldogs 12th, Melbourne 13th, West Coast 14th, North Melbourne 15th, St Kilda 16th, Essendon, I've given him a terrible season, in 17th, and then Richmond in 18th spot. So one round to go. The only finals teams that can change are the Giants and the Crows, sitting either side of the 8. First game, Giants up against St Kilda at home. That's a tough game. I'm going to give it to the Giants. They make the finals, but we'll keep on going. Oh, the Crows would win this one too. Jeez. All right, well, I think that's pretty tough on the Crows, but yeah, I think that's how it's going to play out. At home, the Bulldogs win that. Collingwood up against Melbourne. Collingwood win that one pretty comfortably. Yeah, Geelong do the same. Essendon against Carlton. It's going to be a dead rubber this game, so I'll give it to Essendon. At the Gabba, I'll go with Brisbane. Port win that against the Gold Coast. In Perth, Sydney aren't too bad over there. But there we have it, guys. There is my 2025 AFL ladder predictor. The final one that we'll be making before the season begins. I've got the Cats winning the minor premiership, Brisbane sneaking into 2nd spot, Hawthorn in 3rd, Fremantle in 4th, and Collingwood in 5th, just missing out in the top 4 by percentage. Port Adelaide and Sydney and the Giants round out the top 8. The Crows just miss out on finals. Carlton are in 10th, Bulldogs 11th, Gold Coast 12th, Melbourne are in 13th, West Coast 14th, North Melbourne 15th. With 7 wins, that's a pretty good improvement. St Kilda in 16th. A lot of injuries at the start of the year. I think it's going to hamper them. Essendon right down the bottom in 17th. And then Richmond round out the ladder with the wooden spoon. Only 2 wins. So I'm thinking they're going to have a pretty poor year. But I think the next few years for Richmond are going to be tough. But I think overall they're doing the right thing. Let's do a quick wrap up of the final. So first final would be Geelong against Fremantle. This would probably be at the MCG. I'll go with Geelong. Collingwood up against Giants in the first elimination final. I'm going to go with Collingwood. Port Adelaide up against Sydney at Adelaide Oval. Well, this is an elimination final, so I will go Port. If it was a qualifying final, Sydney would win that every day because Port Adelaide are true chokers at that point. Brisbane up against Hawthorn in the first qualifier. I'll go Brisbane because it's in Brisbane. Fremantle up against Collingwood in Perth. I'm only going to say Collingwood because they're decent in Perth. And then Hawthorn against Port Adelaide. That would be an epic semi-final. A rematch of last year. This would be in Melbourne. I'll go with Hawthorn. Sets up an interesting... look at that. Massive rivals. Geelong versus Hawthorn in the prelim final. I'll go with the Cats. And then Brisbane up against Collingwood. At the Gabba, I'll go Brisbane. Which sets up for a grand final against Geelong v Brisbane, and my 2025 premiers at this stage are the Cats. So guys, make sure to know down below what you think of my ladder predictor. Make sure to roast me down below in the comments or agree with me if you think any are somewhat true. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, but for now, we'll catch you all in the next one.